Hello everyone, welcome back to the Intimacy Lab. I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever stood in silence, watching her walk away, feeling every part of yourself screaming for a word, just one word, that might change everything? But instead you hold back, you stay quiet, not because you don't care, but because you know that silence is often louder than pleading. That quiet, it has a power most men overlook. It's not about revenge or punishment, it's about allowing absence to speak where words would fail. When a man becomes comfortable enough in himself to withhold explanation, to withhold reaction, he becomes unforgettable. That absence lingers in the mind of a woman far longer than any speech you could give, because it gives her something rare time to feel your absence deeply. Tonight, I want to guide you into that space, not a place of manipulation or cruelty, but a place of elegant distance. A place where your presence was so undeniable that when you retreat, she can feel your energy missing without you needing to say a word. In this conversation, I will walk beside you through the subtle art of withdrawal, not as an escape, but as a powerful reminder of your worth. Let's talk about how to make her feel your absence profoundly deeply while you remain silent. I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever stood in silence, watching her walk away, feeling every part of yourself screaming for a word, just one word, that might change everything? But instead you hold back. You stay quiet, not because you don't care, but because you know that silence is often louder than pleading. That quiet, it has a power most men overlook. It's not about revenge or punishment, it's about allowing absence to speak where words would fail. When a man becomes comfortable enough in himself to withhold explanation, to withhold reaction, he becomes unforgettable. That absence lingers in the mind of a woman far longer than any speech you could give, because it gives her something rare time to feel your absence deeply. Tonight, I want to guide you into that space, not a place of manipulation or cruelty, but a place of elegant distance. A place where your presence was so undeniable that when you retreat, she can feel your energy missing without you needing to say a word. You see, so many men rush to explain, rush to defend, rush to rescue themselves from the discomfort of silence. But here's the paradox. The man who resists that urge and simply allows the space to breathe becomes a man she remembers. When you stop talking and start embodying dignity, you shift the dynamic entirely, not through aggression, but through calm, controlled presence. Have you ever noticed how easily people underestimate the gravity of absence? We think that distance weakens bonds, but in truth, when there has been real connection, distance sharpens emotions. When you step back in silence, your absence begins to fill the space like fog. She will replay your moments, searching for why you are quiet, why you are absent, why you are no longer filling her emotional landscape with your energy. This is where your power begins, and I want you to think about this not as a game, but as a kind of discipline. You are not ignoring her to punish. You are removing yourself because you understand that your presence is valuable, and she must feel that value not only when you are in the room, but especially when you are not. Let's begin here. When a woman expects your immediate response, don't give it, not because you are cold, but because you are deliberate. When she sends that message testing, questioning, baiting, you don't rush to explain. You breathe, you give her the gift of your silence, and in that silence, her mind will do the work for you. She will imagine what you are thinking. She will start to feel that gap, that emotional distance, and this is where deep loss begins to take root. Now pause with me for a moment. Can you feel how difficult that is? To hold back your natural impulse to repair, to defend, to clarify. It's deeply uncomfortable. It requires self-trust. But when you practice this restraint, you show a level of confidence and calm masculinity that very few men exhibit. This is where desire is reawakened not by chasing, but by allowing her to lean into the void you have quietly created. And what happens next is fascinating. You stop explaining yourself. You stop negotiating for space. You simply take the space. The moment you realize that her emotional landscape should not control your peace, you begin to stand taller without uttering a single word. It is in your quiet withdrawal that she begins to feel the contours of what she has lost. She notices that your good morning texts are gone. Your laughter, your calming energy, your presence missing, not dramatically missing, but elegantly absent. And here's where your discipline must continue. When she reaches out, when she wonders why you've stepped back, you don't break the silence to rehash the old argument or justify your withdrawal. You allow your absence to remain dignified, and remember, this is not about ghosting, and it's not about punishing. It's about honoring yourself enough to let her come toward you in her own time, or not at all. You give her space to feel that distance fully, without interrupting the process with desperate explanations or defenses. This is how a man teaches presence without speaking. He models it, he embodies it. His absence becomes a lesson in value. So let's talk about embodiment for a moment. When you retreat from the noise, you must not sulk. Your life must continue with purpose, with movement, with quiet joy. You do not post bitter quotes online. You do not rant to mutual friends. You simply disappear gently, gracefully into your own world, a world she no longer has access to. And this is precisely what amplifies the sense of loss. You create a contrast. She knows what it was like when your energy was there, generous and available, and now it is gone. No drama, no announcements, just gone. In this absence, you invite her to feel what she could not feel when you were right in front of her. She will look at her phone differently now, waiting for the text that isn't coming. She will check the places where you once showed up for her, and she will find empty spaces where your attention once lived. Do you feel the power of that? It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's devastating, not because you intended harm, but because you respected yourself enough not to beg for understanding. And that's where your strength lies, in the quiet discipline of self-respect. Now I want you to picture yourself walking through your day without her validation. Imagine what it feels like to enjoy your own company, to cultivate your own life, without waiting for her to fill the empty spaces. This is not about pretending, it's about actually enjoying the freedom you now have to explore your own world, while she begins to feel the quiet ache of your absence. That absence, it speaks louder than any plea, any argument, any explanation you could offer. And as you embody this silence, you shift from the man who chased you to the man who simply is. And the paradox is that the more you allow this space to exist, the more magnetic you become, not because you are seeking her return, but because your withdrawal reveals the richness of your presence that she can now feel in its absence. So let's stay with this thought for a moment. You are not withdrawing to win her back. You are withdrawing because you understand that your presence is too precious to be taken for granted. That lesson can only be taught without words. Now that you've begun to understand this first movement, the discipline of silence and absence, we can continue walking deeper into this conversation. There's more to this dance than simply stepping back. There are nuances in your energy, in your posture, in the way you live your life that deepen this effect even further. There's more to this dance than simply stepping back. There are nuances in your energy, in your posture, in the way you live your life that deepen this effect even further. When you create absence, it's not merely physical, it's energetic. It's a shift in the space you once occupied in her mind and emotions. But that absence becomes compelling only if you fill that space with dignity, not despair. That's why it's essential that when you withdraw, you do so with grace and with purpose, not sulking in shadows, but standing in sunlight. Let's speak about that purpose, because this is where most men falter. They go silent, but remain emotionally entangled. Their mind is still orbiting her, obsessing over what she thinks, waiting for her next message, monitoring her reactions, craving reassurance. That is not true withdrawal, that is a trap. You see, it's not enough to remove your words if your heart is still tangled in her responses. True absence, the kind that makes her feel your loss deeply, comes when you redirect your focus inward, not superficially, but meaningfully. When you begin to rebuild your inner world and reconnect with your own desires, ambitions, passions, and joys. When you reclaim your mornings for yourself, when you fill your days with activities that enrich you rather than drain you. This, my dear listener, is what gives your silence power, not the withholding itself, but the life you live in that silence. You must remember that she cannot miss you if you are quietly waiting around for her attention. That's not absence, that's invisibility. The distinction matters deeply. Absence is intentional, dignified, alive. Invisibility is passive, resentful, stagnant. Imagine her scrolling through her phone, knowing you are out there, but not being able to feel your energy reaching for her. No updates, no passive likes, no cryptic stories designed to provoke her curiosity. Just calm, radiant distance. And what's fascinating about this dynamic is that the less noise you make, the more space she has to wonder about you. Women feel lost not just in your silence, but in the absence of attention. Attention is nourishment in relationships, and when it disappears, the hunger sets in. You must not feed her that nourishment prematurely. Instead, you must feed yourself. That's the art. While she is wondering where you've gone, you are right there, present, alive and well, but no longer offering your energy freely. And this is where self-possession becomes magnetic. You cultivate a presence even in absence. She senses that you are living, growing, expanding without her. She may not see all the details, but she will feel it in the quiet, because your energy has shifted from dependence to independence. So I want you to think about your posture now, not just your physical posture, but the posture of your mind and spirit. When you choose to withdraw, do you shrink or do you stand taller? Do you diminish yourself in resentment, or do you elevate yourself in calm sovereignty? This distinction is the difference between pushing her away in bitterness and drawing her attention back through curiosity. And here's the other nuance. When you do speak, when your silence finally gives way to words again, if it does, those words carry more weight. Your voice becomes more potent precisely because it is no longer overused. Every message you didn't send makes the one you do send more meaningful. Every reaction you withheld makes the moment you choose to engage again feel intentional, not reactive. That's the power of scarcity. Your presence, your attention, your words, they are not infinite. They are precious. And a precious thing is felt most deeply when it is missing. But there's something even more beautiful here. Your withdrawal isn't just about teaching her a lesson or making her feel loss. It's about teaching yourself that your attention is precious too. It's about reclaiming your own value in your own eyes. When you see your time, your energy, your care as valuable, you no longer offer it where it is unappreciated. You don't need to say, "I'm withdrawing because you hurt me." You simply withdraw. You don't need to say, "I'm focusing on myself now." You simply focus. And in doing so, you send a message more powerful than any text. You show her that your peace does not depend on her presence, your worth does not depend on her validation, and your happiness does not depend on her affection. This is the deepest silence. A man who no longer needs the other person to fill his emotional gaps. And when a man reaches this state, it is felt viscerally. Women can sense when a man is truly gone, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. And that kind of absence has gravity. It pulls her thoughts back toward you, not because you are demanding her return, but because your absence has revealed your value in a way that words never could. So as you cultivate this elegant distance, it's not about disappearing entirely from life. It's about living your life fully, but without needing to share it with her unless she has earned that place again. When she reaches out, when she tries to provoke a reaction, when she sends the breadcrumb texts to test if you're still available, you do not respond immediately. You wait, not out of cruelty, but out of deliberation. You are no longer reactive, you are intentional. And what happens next is fascinating. The energy dynamic between you begins to shift. She no longer feels in control of your attention. She no longer assumes your availability. She begins to feel the weight of your absence, not because you are playing a game, but because you are finally embodying self-respect. And that's when she starts to question, what was it about you that made your presence so comforting, so reliable, so nourishing? In your absence, she begins to relive those moments. She begins to appreciate what she overlooked. She begins to feel the subtle ache of realizing that you are no longer where she left you emotionally or physically. This is the space where transformation happens not just in her, but in you, because as you remain silent and composed, you are not waiting for her to return. You are discovering who you are without needing her gaze to define you, and that discovery makes you even more compelling. It makes you magnetic not because you are chasing, but because you have become anchored. Anchored men do not chase approval. Anchored men allow their absence to teach others what their presence truly meant, so breathe into this discipline. Practice it, make your silence dignified, your absence graceful, and your presence rare. This is how you create deep loss without uttering a single word, not as manipulation, but as a profound invitation for her to recognize the gift she once had in you. And as you hold this space calmly, intentionally, we can now move into the next layer of this journey. There is more to embodying this energy, because silence alone is not enough. It must be combined with emotional clarity and self-mastery. It must be combined with emotional clarity and self-mastery, because silence by itself is only powerful when it arises from a place of genuine self-possession, not resentment or wounded pride. The silence that makes a woman feel your loss most deeply is the silence that comes from a man who is anchored in himself, who has chosen to step back with grace, not because he's waiting for her to chase him, but because he values his peace more than proximity. Emotional clarity means knowing exactly why you are withdrawing and being at peace with that decision. It means no second guessing, no anxious waiting, no desperate scanning of your phone. When you choose absence, you are not choosing it temporarily while hoping she notices. You are choosing it because you've realized that your emotional well-being requires space, and that space cannot be negotiated. Self-mastery then becomes essential, because there will be moments when your heart pulls you back toward her. When you feel that urge to break the silence and reach out, just to feel that familiar warmth again. This is where mastery begins, in the ability to sit with that discomfort and remain still, to honor your own boundaries even when your emotions try to convince you otherwise. It is in this stillness that she begins to feel something different. She begins to feel that you are no longer available in the way you used to be, not just physically but energetically. And that shift unsettles her because it confronts her with her own behavior. She must now sit with the absence you have created and reflect on why it feels so heavy. But this self-mastery is not coldness, it is not bitterness, it is warmth directed inward. While you maintain your silence, you are simultaneously cultivating joy in your own life. You are reconnecting with your friends, rediscovering your passions, rebuilding the parts of yourself that perhaps became too wrapped up in her attention. And that joy, that quiet confidence, radiates in ways she can sense even without seeing you. Have you ever noticed how absence feels sharper when you know the person who is absent is thriving? That's the dynamic you are creating here. You are not withdrawing to suffer in silence. You are withdrawing to flourish quietly. And it is that flourishing that deepens the sense of loss, not because you want to inflict pain, but because you are embodying a life that no longer revolves around her validation. This is why you must resist the temptation to make your absence loud. You do not announce your withdrawal. You do not hint at your silence on social media. You do not make passive-aggressive comments designed to signal your pain. All of those actions diminish the power of your absence because they reveal that you are still emotionally tethered to her approval. True power is quiet, true absence is graceful, true dignity requires no explanation, and so as you continue to embody this elegant silence, you become not just absent but elevated. Elevated above the noise, the drama, the push and pull of reactive communication. You stand apart not because you are aloof, but because you are centered. This centering changes everything. When you speak again, if you choose to speak again, your voice carries a different energy. It is no longer pleading or explaining. It is simply clear. When you look at her again, if you choose to look at her again, your gaze carries a different weight. It is no longer seeking approval or validation. It is simply calm, and this calmness is magnetic, because she will feel it before she understands it. She will feel that you have detached not in bitterness but in peace. She will sense that you are no longer orbiting her mood swings, her validations, her approval. And that detachment, that sovereignty makes you infinitely more attractive, because in that space she realizes what has been lost, the certainty of your attention. This is what so few men understand. When you disappear with dignity, when you embody absence without bitterness, you are not pushing her away. You are pulling her into a deeper emotional reckoning. You are creating the conditions in which she must confront her own behavior, her own emotions, her own accountability. And whether she comes back or not, you have already won because you have reclaimed yourself. Now let's speak about embodiment even further. Absence must not only be emotional and energetic, it must be physical too. If you used to visit places she loves, stop. If you used to be easily reachable, become less accessible, not because you are hiding, but because you are living elsewhere now. You are reclaiming your spaces, your time, your rituals, and this embodiment of absence isn't done to provoke curiosity, but curiosity will inevitably follow. She will wonder where you are, what you are doing, who you are becoming, not because you are showing her carefully curated glimpses online, but because you have truly stepped away. There is an old truth in relational psychology. People value what they fear losing. When you were always available, she could not feel the fear of loss because your presence was constant. It was taken for granted, but now that you have quietly stepped back, not in anger but in clarity, she begins to feel the contours of that loss in a way she never could before. She will feel it in her quiet moments, in the places where you used to laugh together, in the mornings when your texts used to appear, in the evenings when your voice used to soothe her, and while she is sitting with that loss, you are sitting with your own growth. You are not waiting for her return. You are not building your life in hopes that she will notice and come back. You are simply building your life because it is yours to build. This is where the deeper mastery lies. You are no longer performing absence for her benefit. You are living absence for your own well-being. And in this space of elegant silence, graceful distance, and dignified absence, you are teaching not only her, but yourself, what your worth truly feels like. And that is what makes your absence unforgettable. It is not the absence itself. It is who you become in that absence. So take a breath with me now. Feel the calm in your body as you imagine no longer reacting, no longer explaining, no longer chasing. Feel the quiet dignity that comes when you know you are enough without needing to prove it. This is the heart of it. This is where your silence becomes your power, your absence becomes your magnetism, and your self-possession becomes your freedom. And as you hold this place firmly, gently, calmly, we continue walking deeper into this journey. Because even in your graceful absence, there are ways to amplify the sense of loss further, not with manipulation, but with elegant, self-contained presence. Because even in your graceful absence, there are ways to amplify the sense of loss further, not with manipulation, but with elegant, self-contained presence. And this presence, paradoxically, is most powerful when it exists quietly in the background of her awareness. Let me explain what I mean by this. Presence is not just physical. It's a felt sense, a subtle energetic imprint you leave behind in her emotional landscape. When you were with her, you shaped her days in ways she may not have fully recognized. Your humor colored her mornings, your steady attention calmed her evenings, your curiosity sparked her thoughts. All of that was part of her rhythm. Now, in your dignified absence, those rhythms continue, but your imprint is gone. It is the contrast between what was and what is now that creates that unmistakable ache. She wakes up, and your energy isn't there to greet her. She scrolls through her day, but your curiosity isn't lighting up her conversations. She goes to sleep, and your calm voice isn't the last thing she hears. And as she feels this contrast more acutely, something very human happens. She begins to replay all the moments where she overlooked the value of your presence. In her mind, small details will return. The way you looked at her when she wasn't paying attention. The way your attention was undivided when she spoke. The warmth in your voice when she was tired or uncertain. That's the beauty of graceful absence. It makes her remember. But here's the subtlety. This effect only works when you are absent with integrity. If your absence is laced with bitterness, she senses it. If your absence is performative, designed to make her jealous, to manipulate her emotions, it loses its power. But when your absence is authentic, when it's rooted in genuine self-respect and self-care, then it resonates deeply. She will feel the dissonance between how available you used to be and how quietly centered you are now. She will notice that you are no longer seeking her gaze, and she will begin to crave that gaze in return. This is why your energy during this period matters so much. Your absence must not be filled with desperation disguised as distance. It must be filled with richness. You must use this space to cultivate a life that feels meaningful again, one where your time, attention, and care are directed toward people, pursuits, and passions that nourish you deeply. In this way, your absence speaks a kind of poetry. I am whole without you, and that is precisely what makes her feel the depth of your loss. Not because you are angry, but because you are well. She will feel that you are no longer orbiting her, no longer waiting, no longer making her the center of your emotional gravity. And the irony, of course, is that this creates gravity of its own, a powerful magnetic pull born from detachment. But this pull must remain subtle. You are not sending cryptic signals to suggest your flourishing. You are not broadcasting your freedom. You are simply living it. This is the embodiment of masculine stillness, a presence that is felt even in absence. And when you embody this stillness fully, you create an emotional vacuum. She may try to fill it with distractions, new connections, or performative self-sufficiency. But these things rarely satisfy because they cannot replicate your specific energy. That is what she truly misses, not just you as a person, but you as a presence. The way you held space, the way you listened deeply, the way you responded with steadiness, the way you anchored her when she felt untethered. And all of this becomes amplified because you are not around to remind her with words. You are not sending notes to explain your value. You are not negotiating your importance. You are simply absent, and in that absence she must do the work. She must remember, she must feel, she must acknowledge, whether to herself or in the quiet of her own mind, that something meaningful is gone. And as you live this way, something profound happens inside you as well. You begin to see yourself more clearly. You begin to understand that your attention is precious currency, that your love, your care, your presence, all of these things are gifts to be offered selectively to those who are willing and able to truly receive them. This is what dignified absence teaches you, to become selective again. You stop giving your energy so freely to anyone who simply demands it. You start to honor your time. You start to honor your boundaries. You start to recognize that your energy is not infinite, and that your peace must come first. And this shift, this inner clarity, is felt on a deep, intuitive level by everyone around you, including her. Because here's a truth that often goes unspoken. Women can feel when a man has reclaimed himself. They can feel when his attention is no longer a given, but a choice. They can feel when he is no longer looking outward for validation, but looking inward for alignment. And that alignment is power. It changes the way you walk into a room. It changes the way you sit with silence. It changes the way you respond when she eventually reaches out, if she does, because by then you are no longer responding from a place of scarcity or longing. You are responding, if you choose to at all, from a place of calm abundance, and that difference is everything. So, as you continue this journey of dignified absence, I want you to cultivate this inner abundance. I want you to fill your life with what nourishes you not as a performance, but as a practice. Reconnect with your body, move, exercise, walk. Reconnect with your mind, learn, read, reflect. Reconnect with your heart, spend time with people who see you and appreciate you fully. This is not about proving anything to her. This is about proving something to yourself, that you can stand alone without shrinking. That your life has meaning beyond anyone's approval, and as you do this, you become quietly magnetic. Not because you are trying to attract her back, but because you have become attractive again to yourself. You see, the absence that makes a woman feel deep loss is not an empty absence. It is a rich absence. It is an absence that invites curiosity because it is filled with dignity. It is an absence that feels like freedom, not punishment. It is an absence that reveals the value of your former presence, precisely because you have stepped back into yourself. And that is what lingers in her mind, in her heart, in her body long after you've gone silent. This is how absence works when done with grace. It teaches her to feel your value deeply, profoundly, without you saying a single word. And as you hold this elegant posture, we continue even deeper. Because there are further subtleties to this art, a final layer of emotional detachment and inner freedom that magnifies everything we've talked about so far, because there are further subtleties to this art, a final layer of emotional detachment and inner freedom that magnifies everything we've talked about so far. And that layer is about how you carry your freedom once you've reclaimed it, because freedom, too, can be seductive when it is embodied with grace. At this stage, you're no longer just absent, you've become sovereign. A man who has reclaimed himself entirely does not just retreat, he redefines. You are no longer the man waiting to be invited back into her life. You are no longer watching, wondering, or hoping. You've moved beyond needing resolution, beyond needing closure. You are writing a new story, one that no longer revolves around her at all. And this is where something fascinating happens inside you. You begin to experience a lightness, not the lightness of indifference, but the lightness of liberation. You are no longer weighed down by questions like, what is she thinking? Or does she miss me yet? Or will she come back? Those questions simply dissolve, and with them the emotional burden you carried dissolves too. This lightness is where true dignity lives. It's subtle but powerful because it isn't performed, it's lived, and when you live from this place, you no longer need to make her feel your absence. Your absence simply speaks for itself, quietly but unmistakably. And what she feels in this silence is not only the loss of your attention, but the loss of the man who once centered his energy around her. That man is gone. The new man standing in your shoes now is centered around himself. And here's the paradox that self-centeredness, healthy, grounded, whole, is what draws people in most powerfully. Because it signals something rare, self-sufficiency. So think about the way you move through your day now. When you pass familiar places where the two of you shared memories, you don't linger in nostalgia. You simply walk on, fully present, without needing to rewrite the past or erase it either. When her name comes up in conversation, you don't stiffen. You simply smile graciously, calmly, without attachment. You have stopped writing chapters in a story that no longer belongs to you. You've started writing something new entirely, and that energy is unmistakable. You're not hiding, you're not bitter, you're not cold, but you're also not available in the way you once were. Your energy has been reclaimed, and that reclamation is felt even from afar. This is where her sense of loss deepens, because she realizes that even if you return tomorrow, you would not return the same. And the man you have become in your absence is no longer as easily accessible. He is no longer as easily taken for granted. Because absence, when done properly, doesn't just create space, it creates transformation. And that transformation is visible, not in what you say, but in how you are. She will see it in your stillness, she will feel it in your smile, she will sense it in your calmness, in the absence of reactivity, in the grace with which you now move. And whether she reaches out or not, you no longer depend on that outcome. Your self-worth is no longer tethered to her acknowledgement. This is the deepest form of absence, not just physical withdrawal, but emotional release. You are no longer trying to control how she remembers you, what she thinks of you, whether she misses you or not. You have simply let go. And in letting go, you've stepped fully into your own life again. A life that is rich, textured, joyful, not in spite of her absence, but because you've embraced your own presence. And so, when the day comes, if it comes, that she reaches out again, it's not a test for you, it's not a prize to win. It's not an event that defines your value, it's simply a moment. And in that moment, you can respond from wholeness, or you can continue walking your path, depending entirely on what feels right for you. That's the beauty of dignified absence. It leads not to closure from her, but to completeness within yourself. And what's extraordinary about this state is that it transcends this one relationship. The self-possession you cultivate here will change every relationship you enter going forward. You will bring this graceful detachment, this calm strength, this quiet dignity into all your interactions, not because you've become guarded, but because you've become whole. And from this place of wholeness, your energy changes. People will feel it when they sit across from you, that you are no longer trying to prove yourself, no longer performing, no longer chasing. Your conversations become cleaner, more honest, more relaxed, because you are no longer subtly negotiating for validation. Your presence becomes more rare, more precious, not because you are withholding, but because you are selective. And this is the ultimate power of making her feel deep loss without saying a word. It's not about hurting her, and it's not even really about her at all. It's about reclaiming your life so fully that your absence becomes a natural, elegant reflection of your dignity. And that dignity, that self-respect, is what lingers most deeply long after the texts have stopped. Long after the memories have faded, long after the stories have ended, it is the dignity of your silence that she will remember. Because absence, when done well, is not empty, it is full of self-knowledge, it is full of grace, it is full of quiet strength. And when you walk in that absence with calm self-possession, you no longer worry about what she feels or whether she regrets losing you. You already know that the most important thing is not whether she feels your loss, but that you feel your freedom. And that freedom is priceless. So as you breathe into this moment, imagine what it feels like to live fully in your own skin again, to move through the world without seeking anyone's gaze, to fill your time with what nourishes you, not to attract, but to simply be alive. That is what makes you unforgettable, not because you said the perfect thing, but because your silence taught both of you what your presence truly meant. And so this journey comes full circle, not to bring her back, not to provoke regret, but to bring you back to yourself. And that return is the most beautiful gift of all.